Switzerland beat inflation. The price increase in Switzerland, a small mountainous nation in Western Europe, has been significantly less dramatic than it has been in many other countries around the world, which are struggling with persistently high inflation. In 2022, Switzerland's inflation rate rose to a level that was the highest it had been in the previous 29 years, 3.5%. Although it is still quite high in comparison to other developed economies, such as the United States, 9.1%, United Kingdom, 11.1%, and the Eurozone, 10.6%, it is significantly lower than those double-digit rates in Switzerland. According to a statement made by a consumer in Zurich to CNBC 1 month ago, "I think they feel it more abroad than here in Switzerland. My mother resides in Germany, more specifically in Berlin, and she is always informing me that the cost of things has skyrocketed in recent years. To what extent has Switzerland been protected from the effects of excessive inflation, and what are those factors?" This video presents our explorations. The prices begin at a relatively high level. The gross domestic product, GDP, per person in Switzerland is higher than in any other major economy, including the United States, Japan, or Germany, making it one of the wealthiest countries in the world. It is also home to some of the wealthiest citizens in the world, with a mean worth of $696,604 per adult, yet the cost of living is quite high to match the level of wealth in the population. According to the Economist Intelligence Unit, the Swiss cities of Zurich and Geneva maintained their positions among the top 10 most expensive cities in the world in 2017. This was the case even though inflation drove up the cost of living in other already costly locations, such as Singapore and New York. As a consequence of this, Swiss citizens are often less affected by increases in prices. This is because Swiss citizens tend to spend a lesser proportion of their income on necessities such as food and shelter, as opposed to spending a higher proportion of their income on non-essential products. Because people are on average quite rich, the share of food in the overall budget of households is not as big as maybe it is in other countries, said Tobias Straumann, a professor of economic history at the University of Zurich, in an interview with CNBC. Of course, there is disparity among us as well. However, when viewed from a global standpoint, I believe that our social policy operates extremely effectively, he went on to say. The consistency of the Swiss franc as a currency. The strength of the Swiss currency is another factor that contributes to Switzerland's relatively stable cost of living. The value of the local currency has been continuously increasing, and it is projected to achieve parity with the euro in the year 2022. Despite the instability in Europe, the Swiss franc maintained its value with the strengthening of the dollar. This was in contrast to the performance of most other currencies. This is mostly attributable to the fact that it is seen as a haven currency or a defensive asset. The Swiss franc is supported by a sizable reserve of gold, bonds, and other financial assets. These assets provide the Swiss National Bank with the means to maintain the stability of the currency during periods of market uncertainty. That is also beneficial for Switzerland, whose economy relies significantly on commerce across international borders. The majority of Switzerland's annual imports of products and services, which total over 302 billion Swiss francs, come from EU nations that are geographically close by. A higher value for the Swiss franc results in a reduction in the total cost of those imports. When compared to low-margin mass-produced commodities, Switzerland's high-value, high-margin exports, such as watches and pharmaceuticals, are less sensitive to price shifts at the country's lower-margin exports. Switzerland's yearly exports are almost identical to its imports, totaling over $305 billion. A resilient energy supply. Switzerland is also less vulnerable to the effects of some of the external events, such as Russia's involvement in the conflict in Ukraine that drove up prices in 2022. Switzerland is less dependent on oil and gas imports than some of its European neighbors because of its hilly topography and its more than 1,500 lakes. Hydroelectricity plays an essential part in Switzerland's energy supply and is a significant contributor to Switzerland's energy independence. Swiss energy suppliers are likewise generally publicly held, which means that they are less susceptible to excessive market volatility through the use of financial safety nets. However, they are subject to tougher pricing control than their private counterparts. The cost of energy in Switzerland increased at a pace of 16.2% by the end of 2022, which was lower than the levels experienced in large comparable economies such as Germany, 25%, the Netherlands, 30%, the United Kingdom, 52.3%, and Italy, 64.7%. The Swiss government agency in charge of regulating energy costs forecast that prices would increase by an additional 27% in 2023, bringing the average annual energy expenditure for a household to over 1,215 Swiss francs, $1,238 in that year. According to Jean-Claude Huber, manager of Hotel Piz Buen Klosters in the eastern part of Switzerland, The standardization of long-term energy contracts has helped shelter enterprises like his from any significant price increases that may occur this year. This is because the contracts lock in prices for an extended period. Due to the dynamic pricing structure of a four-star hotel, Huber has been able to pass on price increases to customers ranging from approximately 5 to 10% without causing demand to decrease. Because of this, we have a lot more leeway to adjust the rates than we would have if they were always the same. This is quite helpful to us. Huber stated, "I do not doubt that the costs will be higher than they were in the past, but the turnover should also be higher." Controls on prices applied to various goods and services. In addition to limitations placed on the cost of energy, Switzerland's prices of goods and services are subject to stringent controls, which also makes them less sensitive to fluctuations caused by inflation. In Switzerland, approximately one-third, 30%, of the main products that are used to gauge inflation in the Eurozone, including food, housing, and transportation, are subject to price regulation. This is higher than in any other European country, making Switzerland unique among European nations. In December of the previous year, the cost of food in Switzerland increased at an annualized rate of 4.0%, which was lower than the rate of increase of 11.9% in the United States, 16.9% in the United Kingdom, and 19.8% in Germany. Because of the high tariffs placed on some agricultural imports, the prices of domestically produced commodities such as milk and cheese are given preferential treatment and are less susceptible to the effects of shifts in international food markets. Because of this, the economy of the nation has been given a boost as a result. We try to buy as much Swiss as possible, but even regional, Huber added. We even try to buy as much as possible locally. The goal should be to have a local industry that is working and operating over the long term. By 2024, inflation should have dropped to below 2%. This does not mean, however, that Swiss consumers have been completely untouched by the most recent increases in prices. Residents in the area who spoke with CNBC reported a relative increase in the price of rented housing, as well as an increase in the price of certain basic staples. Plan of action taken by the Swiss National Bank. Over more than 25 years, the rate of inflation in Switzerland has remained relatively stable and has been contained within a narrow band. Only in the early 1980s and early 1990s did the nation experience unusually high inflation rates, which reached up to 6.5% in the former case and just under 6% in the latter. Even during the oil crisis that occurred around 1973, the country in the Alps only saw an inflation rate of roughly 9%, when other countries experienced significantly greater levels of inflation. The primary driver behind this phenomenon is the Swiss National Bank's SNB approach to monetary policy. It does not target the average inflation rate, which is typically targeted in other contexts, because it is expected that future values will be adjusted to those of previous years. Instead, it takes a far more laid-back approach to the rise and fall of inflation rates. It does not even strive for a particular value, rather, it is willing to remain within a range of 0 to 2%. Because of this, it is only seldom required to make adjustments to the political and economic ideas that have already been discussed. For instance, the Swiss National Bank will not change its monetary policy in response to an unexpected spike in the price of oil. Do you like it? Kindly give your valuable response in our comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting and informative videos.